Welcome back, family, to the South Florida Recruiting Report. Marcus Benjamin here, representing for Rivals.com. And on three, make sure you follow myself at Benjamin Rivals on Twitter, also on Instagram, Benjamin Report. You can see my articles on Rivals.com when it comes to South Florida recruiting and recruiting in the state. And last week, it was the state championships where several teams were crowned champions of the state, and there were plenty of top performers throughout the week. And to discuss it all, I've got my main man, Larry Blustein, in the house, really to discuss the top performers and to discuss which college teams should be pleased with their signee from their performances from last week. Thanks for joining me today, Larry.
Anytime, Marcus. Thank you.
How about last week, man? There was like some games last week. I mean, a couple of classics, I would say, as far as games are concerned, especially with Northwestern and Reigns. I don't think I'll ever forget that game. It's one of those games that will go down in history. I mean, I think I've gone to maybe thousands. It feels like thousands of high school games now in my career, and that one is going to stick out in my mind. And of course, Lake Mary and Vero Beach was also a classic game as well. But from the week, Blue, you were there. Who really kind of stood out to you as far as like the top performers from the 7 games?
Yeah, well, you take a look, you start out at the 1A game, and obviously that was kind of a surprise to some that Cardinal Newman beat Chaminade in their 10th straight state championship game, and Newman was in there first. And you had some pretty good guys. You had Jerron Hewley, who's on his way to West Virginia, did a tremendous job. The kid Cooper Clark, the defensive back, made 9 tackles. Obviously, you look at Cooper from Derek Cooper, the running back, and Malik Leonard and Jason Lopez. So there was a lot in that game. I thought that probably the game that stood out to me the most as far as the talent, a lot of talent that a lot of people didn't know, was Cardinal Mooney of Sarasota. Loaded, just loaded. They started things off. Coach Jared Clark's team, put 52 points on Bowles. And we know Bowles is just, amazing. And you had, I think the great thing is you had the kid Davin Davidson, who's only a sophomore, and big 6'6" quarterback. Everybody was watching him, because, to begin the year, the Devin Minery kid who's going to Stanford was a starting quarterback, but he got hurt. Davidson came in, and the rest is kind of history. So I was really impressed with them. Obviously, Elijah Golden, who's going to Notre Dame. What a beast. What a beast. I mean, that kid, big defensive tackle. And, you take a look at some of the kids that even Bowles had. I mean, Bowles was loaded. I mean, they had Simeon Caldwell, who's going, who's I think one of the top kids. You had Naeem Burrows, who's going to Clemson. And then you had Xander Edwards, who Marcus, a lot of people never seen. Sophomore, running back, led the state in rushing this year, had a game of 500 yards and 8 touchdowns. The son of Mark Edwards, former 49er, former Notre Dame player. But, and then you look into that Northwestern game that you were talking about. And Coach Donovan Maslin last year brought his team, undefeated Reigns team, down, and they got crushed 41-0. So everybody kind of thought that would be the deal again. Everybody knew Northwestern was loaded. I mean, big time talent everywhere. One of the best quarterbacks in the 2028 class, and Neiman Lawrence. Obviously, some talent, but you take a look at a lot of the kids that were on that team that are going places. Calvin Russell Jr. going to Syracuse. A guy like Nick Lanier, who I think is going to be one of the best young kids, coming back. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But I think people kind of ignored, what Reigns had. And Reigns had a kid like Timothy Coles, who last year,
Yeah.
if you remember, just as a junior, had 178 yards in total offense, even though that they didn't score. But he was a huge factor in that game. So, and then you look at that, obviously, in the 7A final that you were talking about, you have a guy like Noah Grubbs who's going to Notre Dame, and certainly somebody, an Ephraim White, who had to play quarterback most of the year for Vero Beach, who's going to Florida State
Yeah.
as a wide receiver. Got to go back to wide receiver in that game, caught the first touchdown of the game early on. And then St. Thomas. What else are you going to say? I mean, they're loaded up and down, no matter
Stand.
where you go. Somebody like Javion Mallory's cousin comes over there this year and does a
Yes.
tremendous job. And his second state championship with two different teams. And then you have Julius Jones, a kid that I think may be the number one prospect in the state for next year, and maybe one of the best in the nation is Mark Matthews. I mean, you watch that kid play offensive line, and what a beast, I mean, he's a 6'5", 280-pound, no fat, strong, agile, quick. Jesus, you take a look, and they played that game without Justice Fitzpatrick, who got hurt. And
Right.
how valuable he was. He was a finalist for the Nat Moore Award, a 4-year starter. If you
Yep.
remember back in the Central, in the game when he played his freshman year against Homestead, he had a key interception.
Yeah.
As a freshman, the brother of Minka Fitzpatrick. So, and then Wyatt Smith, who
Super
I
player.
think is a kid that we saw last year at a couple of the the rivals camp, or where Under Armour or whatever, and he did real well. And I kept saying, this kid, he's 6'5". Dad played in the NFL, and people kind of forgot about him. And then all of a sudden, a lot of these analysts were watching him at the state championship game, and they go, "Oh, wait a minute." This kid's going to be a freak of nature too, and he's only a junior. So,
Yeah.
no matter where you went, the 4A game, which obviously everybody came to see Darian Coleman, and he didn't disappoint, for the most part. It's just the rest of his team didn't, come through. Darian, accounted for well over 300 yards with his legs, with his arms. With his arm, and yeah, we got a chance to see a lot of really, really good talent on both the Heritage team. I thought Heritage probably turned out to be one of the most well-coached teams, a 5-loss team, and I think you talked to Coach at the end of the game, and I think that the one thing that Coach Smith said is, you know what? We're not going to change our schedule. We're going to play these tough teams because they lose 5 games and they ended up as state champions, and undoubtedly have one of the toughest roads to get there in the state semifinal, having to travel 620 miles,
Yeah.
to the Panhandle, and took care of business. And remember, this was all without the number one player in a lot of people's minds in the country, in Diabell,
Right.
who was hurt all year, and certainly had to play without Jonathan Bueno, who is a really, really good running back, and he was hurt. So,
Sure.
yeah, there was a lot of storylines, Marcus, in these games. I mean, they were, a lot of them are really well played. I enjoyed very much watching a lot of the games, and then you had a couple of runaways, but and I think the job that Jack Daniels did with Cardinal Newman kind of like went over people's heads, because I mean, Chaminade, right, 10 years in a row at that state championship game, and
That's
Newman made them one dimensional, and I guess the Malik looked like a freshman in that game. He didn't play very.
finally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You pretty much kind of named all the guys that I thought were top performers as well. Connell Jackson, if we start with the Cardinal Mooney game, 4
Yeah.
touchdowns in that game. He I
Stud.
expect his recruitment to just blow up in this offseason. He's a little undersized, but definitely very quick, tough to bring down. So I think his recruitment is going to start to pop off in this offseason. Javion Mallory, we got to talk about him. I mean, over 100 yards rushing in the championship game, and he battles back from an injury last season,
Yeah.
like in a concussion car crash type of deal. He's out for basically all of the season. Doesn't play in the championship game last year, but then plays in it this year and really shows what Miami fans are going to get for the next season. Scores 3 touchdowns in that game, and they were
Yeah.
all well earned. I think he's gotten way better than what we saw from his breakout sophomore year, and I think he's really going to be maybe like a combination of Mark Fletcher and Gerard Pringle because he's got the quickness, but he also can run you over as well.
Yeah.
So I was really impressed with his performance. You mentioned Timothy Cole, the quarterback from Reigns. I mean, what can you say about him? Put the team on his back to beat the mighty Northwestern Bulls with all that talent over there on 71st Street. So I was really
And he's
impressed.
going to Florida A&M, which is a perfect fit for him. And he's going to get there with Coach Gray, being the new coach. And I think that he's going to really flourish because he's a kid that, he's not the greatest passer in the world, but he does throw the ball. But he runs, and he's kind of a leader. And I agree. And let me just, if we could double back on Javion Mallory, you got to remember he ran a pretty decent gauntlet, in the playoffs. They had to play Armwood.
Yeah,
Armwood never gave up more than 150 yards total offense to anybody this year. So, and even though Mallory only ran for 38 yards in the game, he scored the winning touchdown. And then, with 30 or 20 seconds left. And
yeah.
as you said, he's a hard runner. He's a combination, not as fast as Gerard Pringle, but he does have that, he has that little, shift, and he can move a little bit, but he can run you over. And yeah, I mean, and the thing is we talk about some of these quarterbacks, and and somebody like a Darian Coleman. Uh, it's getting to the point, not just at Miami, Marcus, but everywhere where everybody's looking at a portal, because usually the quarterback may be that missing piece that kind of separates these teams from going for conference titles or even getting into the playoffs. And a lot of these teams don't want to start a freshman. They don't want to start a sophomore. So they go into the portal, which kind of leaves a lot of these young kids, especially down here at Miami, like Luke Nickel and Darian Coleman, in a tough way because, they're not getting any, look at they did, especially with Emory Williams. Emory Williams, to me, is one of the classic examples as somebody who may have stayed too long, because I think what's going to happen, I think he's going to leave and he's going to go to like a South Alabama, and he's going to flourish. I have a feeling that he's going to have an opportunity because he's 6'5", he's 230, throws the ball real well. But you see somebody like Coleman or like Luke Nickel, they're not big. They're very efficient quarterbacks, but when are they going to get a chance to show what they could do?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a problem, I would say, at the quarterback position in particular, that teams are not really kind of waiting to develop the quarterback that they recruited and eventually signed. We're watching highlights of Javion Mallory's junior
Yeah,
season here. I played highlights of Jaron Hughley earlier, just kind of running through some of the top guys from
yeah.
the
And
state
he's going to
championship.
fit with Rich Rodriguez's new offense, too. I think people are quick to put him at safety, but I think in that type of offense, he could play quarterback.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a perfect fit. I mean, if you look at the quarterbacks that Rich Rod has had, he's had Khalil Tate, he's had Denard Robinson, he's had Pat White back in the day.
Yeah, yeah,
The type
yeah,
of
yeah.
quarterback that Jaron Hughley is. He ran for a 69-yard touchdown in the championship game against Chaminade to really kind of ignite that team to defeat the Lions in that state
Yeah.
championship game.
And a 5-year varsity player, too. He started at Belgrade's Day and as a seventh and eighth grader. So he's played varsity football for 5 years, which is a huge, especially in the state of Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to double back a little bit about Darion Coleman, man, because this is the second time now that Darion Coleman has lost to American Heritage. And shout out to American Heritage, amazing season. I mean, they, had some trials, tribulations that they went through, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, losing their starting quarterback, 5-star, who's going to Texas, and then they lose their starting running back. Not many teams can recover from losing their starting running back and starting quarterback and go on to win a state championship. Leon
Yeah.
Strouder needs to be given a lot of credit too. He really powered that team to a win with his running ability in that game against Jones, and it's and Jamar Denson. I do have to mention Jamar Denson
Oh,
because
yeah. Yes. Yes.
this
Yeah.
guy is just absolutely electric, catches everything. Really great yards after the catch once he gets the football in his hands.
Yeah.
Troy has got a gem with him. And
100%.
yeah, I think he is going to really excel there. And my guess is that he'll probably be at a Power 4 school after maybe a year or so at Troy.
Yeah. And he
Yeah,
reminds me a lot of Boobie Johnson, who's at Syracuse from Northwestern. Boobie is the same type of player, electric. And if you remember, Boobie was only being recruited by FIU and a couple of other smaller schools. But then Syracuse saw, what he brought to the table. And I think when, when Denson gets to Troy, he's going to show his playmaking abilities. And you're 100% right. They have, and remember Brandon Bennett, who's one of the fastest kids in the state, who's going to FSU. He's another player that they were without for a great period of time
for
this
sure.
year. And
Yeah.
so you got to give credit to Heritage and their coaching staff. They did a great job. Daryl Porter, even I think that Coach Smith pointed out Daryl Porter, their defensive coordinator, as being such an integral part, especially in the playoffs, going against, and a lot of people don't know, but Choctaw is pretty good. I mean, they're big up front, they're very fast, and he devised a way to keep them under wraps, after they're traveled all that way. And then certainly in the state championship game, even though Darian Coleman got a lot of yards, he didn't put it in the end zone a lot. So that's that bend that don't break, attitude, makes, that's what made the Chicago Bears so well back in the day with their, thing. They would give up some yards, but they wouldn't give up many points.
Yeah, that was definitely the key to that game. Darion Coleman did his best to kind of um, battle back with Jones to make it a game
Yeah.
in the end when Heritage was seemingly running away with it. But I want to get your thoughts on Darion Coleman, Blue, because this is the second year in a row that we've seen him in the championship game and losing to American Heritage. He's a talented kid, throws one of the best balls I've ever seen in the high school, ranks. He's pretty accurate and he's a decent runner. I think his running ability is what kept Jones in the game last week. But Miami, he signed with Miami, obviously. So, what do you think the Hurricanes are really getting with Darion Coleman, and when should we expect to see him really kind of do something big for the Canes?
Yeah, that's $1 million question.
Isn't it?
Just like
It
I
really
just,
is.
like I just said, in this day and age of these teams, it's sort of like having a $1 billion watch, but you don't want to use a $50 watch band. I mean, and not to degrade them, it's just from an experience level. A lot of these incoming freshmen are not on par with some of these 4-year seniors or 5-year seniors and such. So they're turning to the portal to get these quarterbacks, to get the Carson Becks, and to get the Dylan Raiolas and guys like that who are coming out this year, and Sam Levitts, and Miami, and even look at Florida, where they had a quarterback that they felt coming out of high school in Texas was going to be one of the premier high school guys going into college, and he just hadn't worked out, and he's in the portal. And so you never know. I just think that he does. I think that Darian fits the Miami game plan now of that type of mobile quarterback. I mean, even though the Beck's not that, he's not the mobile guy. He's more of a classic drop back or an pro style. But I think Coleman has that athleticism that you put him on in the same backfield or in the same offenses with some of the studs that they have now, and he'll be a fit. So, but also let's not forget. I mean, they have Luke Nickel, who was 2-time Georgia Player of the Year, and a guy who also throws the ball pretty well and also has a feel for it. So who gets the first shot to be the backup? Because we know Emery's not going to be around. That's a given, and and Beck will be gone. So that leaves those two guys in Judd Anderson, who I think may be on his way out as well, because what type of future does he have? So
Yeah.
that's another thing. When you're recruiting, you got to understand. I mean, they go, well, you can't have too many quarterbacks. But then all of a sudden, when you have all those quarterbacks and you're not using them, case in point, Miami's up 38-7, 4 minutes left against Pittsburgh, and they didn't even put Emery in, or they didn't put
Yeah.
Luke Nickel. So
Right.
what is the future of the quarterback position at Miami or Ohio State or Michigan State or Michigan? You don't know.
Right.
Because they're all looking to go into the portal. Look at FSU, went and got Castellanos. They had the freshman there, but they opted to go to somebody with more veteran leadership, and I think that's a cycle that's going to be tough to break now, because you're going to see that a lot of these, other than the kids saying at Ohio State, who was a stud coming out of high school, they're not going to that. A lot of these big time programs are not relying on freshmen anymore. They're looking at kids that have played already and that are established, and they're paying a lot of money for them. So I agree with you as far as Coleman, though. His ceiling is unlimited because he's such a great athlete and he throws such a great ball and he's got a great feel. But when does he get his shot?
Yeah, that's the real question. I'll tell you how I feel about Darion Coleman, just performance wise. I think he is he's really calm in the pocket. Doesn't seem to get rattled too much,
Slow,
and
yeah.
yeah, and he does have the running ability. What I do have questions about though is some of his decision making, because once he gets to the college level, you won't be able to run away from defenders like he has in high school. These guys are bigger, stronger, faster. He's not a relatively big quarterback in himself. He took a
Right.
big hit in the state championship game. That a lot of people were wondering if he was going to get back up, but he did, and he
Yeah,
came
yeah.
back and performed pretty well. But yeah, that's what I really kind of question about Darion Coleman, because it seems like he goes through one, maybe two reads, and then he takes off, and
Mhm.
starts running, and that's not necessarily conducive to playing well on the college level. So I would expect that he would need to improve in that area if indeed he is going to play for the Miami Hurricanes, because as of now Miami's a destination for transfer quarterbacks
Yeah.
at, at this point, because we've seen we've seen quarterbacks as far as De'Aaron King. Let's go back to there. We don't have to go back to Cam Ward. De'Aaron King transferred from Houston to Miami, and then yeah, you had a little run with Tyler Van Dyke. That was the last recruited quarterback to really make significant starts at Miami, and then you go to Cam Ward, who has a Heisman-esque type of season, and then Carson Beck leads your team to the playoff. Let's give him that credit. Let's see what he does on Saturday against Texas A&M. And then next season, I've heard Miami be in talks of getting DJ Lagway and Sam Levitt, and even Dylan Raiola. Like Miami could possibly get any of those type of quarterbacks, and these quarterbacks that are transfers have seen Miami be successful with these quarterbacks. So it's an intriguing landing place for these quarterbacks. So yeah, quarterbacks like Luke Nickel, Emory Williams, Judd Anderson, and now Darion Coleman may be left with the decision of, well, should I go somewhere else and actually put some tape together, or should I just try to learn behind a veteran for a couple of years and hope I get my chance? So
Yeah.
yeah,
But that what you're bringing up now is something that I had that conversation with, and talking about, somebody like a Darian Coleman. Go to Florida A&M, go to West Florida, get your
yeah,
tape together, and then show, just like Tiger did from Northwestern. Went to
sure,
Western Carolina and set the nation on their ear this year.
yeah,
So now he's got that massive tape. Now he may not be a Power 4 kid. He is what he is, but he could go to an App State, or he could go to one of those next
sure,
level schools, and that's what I'm saying. Then you get your money, and then you get your, and that's how you do it. It's just tough to give a high school kid $2-3 million when they're not even, may not even play. And
yeah,
I think that's going to stop. And they're going to put the money into those, like you said, like the Sam Levitts or Dylan Raiola's, guys that have been there for a few years and put some tape together and establish themselves at the Power 4 level. Because I don't see these schools just continuing to recruit high school quarterbacks. And, we
right,
see all these high school quarterbacks, but yeah, they're getting it done at the high school level. And, the Jaden Rashada and guys like that. I mean, yeah, they're good in high school, but this is a whole different level,
yeah,
especially if you're playing at this next elite level. If you're in Alabama, or you're in Ohio State, or look at TJ Carr, he got it, Miami was his first start, against, when Notre Dame came in. So,
right.
and even
TJ
with Fernando Mendoza. I mean, you remember Fernando played at Cal, and then he came over to Indiana.
Right.
It wasn't like he was a true freshman,
That's a
I
perfect
mean,
example.
and he's turned things around. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to be the total norm, because there's a lot of programs like, at Ohio State or a couple of others that they'll get freshmen, but those freshmen will build up their their stock, and they may leave to go other places. And then what do you do then? You got to start all over again. So
Right.
yeah, I think that the development of a quarterback, especially at an elite level. I mean, if you're a top 4 or 5 school, look how it took Arch Manning 2-3 years to get on the field, fully, until Ewers left. Went to the Dolphins. By the way, he's starting this week.
Yeah.
Starting for the Dolphins. Yeah, I mean, in here, just in our state, you mentioned DJ Lagway. He was a great savior. I mean, what is Florida going to do next year? They don't have a quarterback they're going to have to, go into the, into the portal as well, and try to get themselves an established quarterback. Like I said, Florida State 2 years ago, they had the young freshman kid that they wanted to develop, but then all of a sudden they weren't willing to wait, after a crappy season, that they had. And then all of a sudden Castellanos from Boston College, a kid that was down here at UCF and then went up to Boston College. Yeah, so I think that's what it's, like you look at guys like the kid Maeva from USC. He just signed back on, which is kind of a rarity. A
Yeah,
lot of these kids are playing a year and either going into the NFL or going to somewhere else where they can make $2-3 million. But Mayava is one of those kind of strange guys that started out at UNLV, went to Georgia for a minute, and then saw that there was a dead end there. Then he went to USC and took Miller Moss's position, and then Miller Moss went to Louisville. So it's kind of like this. It's
carousel.
yeah, it's like it's just like coaches.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at these coaches, they lose one place and everybody covets them somewhere else. I mean, they can't get it done here, but, they're giving them $4 million or $5 million to come somewhere else. So,
right.
yeah, who
Yeah,
knows?
it's crazy, man. TJ Finley, the quarterback out of Louisiana, is in the portal.
Yeah.
I think he's going to his 7th or 8th school or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
It's crazy. And then you talk about coaches, Billy Napier, they wanted to put him on a crucifix or something like that. And now he's over.
Now he's going back to a smaller school in James Madison. So
yeah. So
who knows?
Fun times here at college football and high school football. I do, before I get you out of here, Blue, I do want to talk a little bit about the 2027 class and some of the guys that we saw at the state championship games, or even not at the state championship games, that should be on everyone's radar. Let's just say here in the state of Florida and here in South Florida as well. For me, 2027 is pretty loaded, man. And there's a lot of really good talent pretty much at every position. When I go to the state championship games, if you start off with the Chaminade Newman game, you got the 2 running backs at Chaminade, man. You got Arwen Jackson, who I absolutely love, and then Lee Prince Jr., man. Now, those 2 guys are 2 running backs that I think will make a significant impact for Chaminade if they indeed stay there. Who knows, what's going to happen and who's going to go where. A lot of players kind of jumping here and there and everywhere pretty much. And speaking of one of those players, Kai Moore, the quarterback from Norland, is now transferring to Columbus. So 2027 quarterback, and, very talented guy, has extremely high upside. I actually have a story that I'm going to be writing. I interviewed him yesterday, so I'll be putting a story out on him very soon.
Nice.
And
good kid.
Also, the other 2027 guys that impressed me during the state championship week was Jamar Thompson. I thought was pretty impressive. Big
from West Boca,
guy from West Boca, defensive tackle, Miami, Ole Miss, Nebraska in the mix for him. And then can't talk 2027 in South Florida without talking Nick Lanier. I mean, this kid is just absolutely dynamic. Almost led the West back to a win over Reigns, as the one time that the West went deep, it was Nick Lanier catching the ball for a touchdown. There's several other 2027 guys. Julius Jones, the guy that you mentioned earlier.
Mark Matthews, who I think is probably one of the best ones, around. The kid's a big time, player. Amari Stevens from Chaminade, who I think is going to be really, really special as well. Amari Nugent, the big corner from American Heritage Plantation, who is big time. I think Zayden Gamble from St. Thomas, who is another kid who I think is, got a chance to be special. Jalen Jones, who was at Western, went to MacArthur, probably one of the premier players. A kid that a lot of people don't know, but he's committed to Miami now, DeMarcus DeRoche from Fort Lauderdale's Cardinal Gibbons. A kid that started out at Boyd Anderson, a big-time basketball player, edge kid. It's about 6'5" or so. I think he's going to be special. Bryce Williams, the cornerback who's going to from Western, is going to FSU. Who's I
committed actually.
Yeah. No, he's a big time. Yeah, he's a big time kid. Other guys like in South Florida, like Trezevan Boyd from Matter Academy, a really really good corner. A lot of people watched him, when he was when he was younger. Jacob Thomas, a wide receiver from Flanagan, who I think is going to be really special in the 27 class. We got a chance
Sure.
in a state title game, although he was banged up a little bit. Amos Bradford, the running back out of West Broward, who I think's got a chance to be really, really good. A kid that a lot of people haven't really seen much of, but Anthony Jennings out of Dillard, who is probably going
For
to be one of
sure.
the fastest kid. Quarterback that you and I were just talking about, James Perrone, who just transferred to Central, got him closer to home. He lives in Hillsborough, Lighthouse Point, in Broward County, so now he gets closer to home. Uh, St. Thomas got the kid Jaden Carey, who I think is going to be really good at wide receiver. Jamari
Yeah.
Foreman from
Yeah.
Plantation, who committed to Florida State.
Yep.
That's a kid that I watched plenty. This last year, I think he's got a chance to be extremely special. Tyler Reed, the running back out of Miramar, who's the younger brother of the Reed, who's at
Desmond
Pittsburgh right
Reed.
now.
Yep.
Right. Who I thought had a fairly decent year. I think a guy who probably watched his stock go up more at the state games is Wyatt Smith,
For
6'6",
sure.
235-pound defensive end. Dad played in the NFL. I think he's got a shot to, he was, when we came out with our last rankings, he was in the 50s. I can guarantee it'll be in the 20s this time because he shoots up. But that's what when you go to these games, Marcus, and see kids, Kamarian Young from a wide receiver out of MacArthur, who had a huge year this past year for Coach Chop's team, who kind of, put to get guys like before they have a defensive back. They have Sherrod Gordine, who's an athlete, kid can play on both sides of the ball. You had
For
mentioned,
sure.
what about Trey Proctor, who
Oh yeah.
yeah,
For
who's
sure.
on the run again. I think he's transferring again from South Ridge.
Where is he?
But
Is he going to
nevertheless,
Central with the Perone, his guy?
yeah, no, I think he may be headed up to Heritage. But
Mm,
and then a team that we saw this year that had a lot of talent is Archbishop McCarthy, Jacoy Highsmith, who's I think a really good linebacker, one of the top linebackers. You mentioned Arwen Jackson. I think Arwen's going to be really good. What about Jannard Young, kid, a running back that came from Vero Beach and was a leading rusher in South Florida this year from Piper? And I kind of I
yes,
don't
I
pat
like him a
myself
lot.
I don't
I
pat
like him.
myself on the back, but I had said when he got here, and I was telling our good friend Frank over at University of Miami, I said there's a kid that's coming from Vero, and usually when a kid leaves a school, a coach goes, we didn't need him anyway, but I'll tell you what, he would have made a huge difference for Vero Beach. But he was the leading rusher. He and Kamari from South Plantation were the two top running backs, and no one even knew anything about, but they came. Jaden Dean, center from St. Thomas Aquinas. I think he's got a chance. I think a quarterback that's kind of really showed this last year that he's ready to contend is Zach Katz from
Yep.
True
I
North.
was going to mention him. Yeah.
Yeah, and you watched him. You had an opportunity to see him in that playoff game, and
Yeah.
then that's a guy who he's worked his butt off to get where he's at, and I don't want
Yeah.
to forget about Jeremiah Smith's brother Angelo, who's
Yeah.
got a chance to be pretty special too.
For sure.
As a safety, as somebody who's plays on if he wants on both sides of the ball, under the radar guy, and I got to tell you. Please remember this name, Jamal Robinson Jr. He's a wide receiver out of Matter
Adam
Academy.
Matter Academy. Yeah.
Started out at Killian, and then made his way over. I think he's a kid that has an opportunity, and another kid that because he had all these struggles of transferring. But now he's at MacArthur. He was at South Broward, went to West Broward. His name is Debonair Johnson.
Yeah.
Big time kid,
Aiden
linebacker.
Johnson's brother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A linebacker, about 6.5, about 215, 220. We talked about Tavoris Finley, who had a major year for Chaminade this year.
Yes, he
Just a
did.
major. I think he
They're
led them in
very under the radar. I felt like nobody really kind of talked about Travorce Finley. I think he was excellent, but tons of sacks and just constant pressure on the quarterback. So I really like him, and
yeah,
Tamoris Campbell as well.
exactly.
Another kid from Chaminade who I think on the defensive side of the ball really made a name for himself this year.
100%. And those guys like that, a lot of people kind of had a tendency to overlook because they didn't see them, a lot. And and you look, especially like statewide. I mean, I had a chance to watch Caden Henderson, the linebacker out of Tampa
Yeah, me
Jesuit,
too. Yeah,
big time kid. I
absolutely.
mean, in IMG has kids too. I mean, it's tough to ignore them because they're some of the best, like Zyron Forstall and Orseni Gales, who I think were really good. But you have Mecky Williams also out of Leonard High School up there, in the St. Petersburg area. You have Sean Tatum, the big offensive lineman that everybody's on from Fort Pierce, John Carroll. Trinard Roberts, who transferred from IMG to the Villages. Yeah. So there's a lot of talent. We saw another kid speaking about in the state championship game that had a pretty good championship game. Frederick Ards, the
Yeah,
defensive end, the edge kid from
sure.
Jones.
Yeah,
Even though he wore a different number than he usually wore, but yeah, there's a lot of dudes, I mean
yeah, for
that
sure.
we're going to get a chance to see, in the off season. That a lot of IMG kids, obviously, but Cedric Irvin's son, Amari Irvin, who's at the IMG Academy and had a great year as a linebacker. Yeah, so, and then we even saw Santana Harvey from Lakeland, who, but I'll tell you, a kid, it's under the radar. I think he's going to be on the move, probably go to Cardinal Newman. But this kid, he led the state of Florida in tackles 2 years in a row as a sophomore and as a junior. His name is Levi Champion. He's out of King's Academy, and he's a big kid, 6'5", about 210. So guys like that a lot of people don't get a chance to see. I think that's the one thing, and you and I get a chance to go to the camps and see a lot of these players.
Yeah,
People see me like in Tallahassee, or they'll see me over at West Florida or wherever, and they'll go, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, watching kids that that's the advantage, that you see a kid last spring or last summer that people are gushing about now, like Wyatt Smith. Here's a perfect
right.
example. Our good friend John Santucci, he was, oh my God, this kid's great. I said, John, last year I was telling everybody about the kid because we saw him at Rivals. And remember, he kind of misleads you because he wears the number 88, which is like a
Yeah,
tight end number. So,
right.
yeah, there's a whole lot of talent, and we got a chance. We're at Prep Red Zone. We're doing our final 2026 list, and then we'll have our updated 27, and then our initial list of 2028 kids, which is another big time class. I mean, there's a whole host of kids for 2028. No longer are these kids only just playing varsity, in the 11th grade. You have big time kids, just in our area alone, like Zion Davis, in the 28 class of DB from
Yeah,
Killian, who I think is going to be, just a stud.
yeah,
And then you got Damian Harvey, who we've watched for 2 years at Central, the big defensive end. So there's tons of guys.
sure.
Tremone Isaac, I think he's going to take a
Yeah,
step up next year for Chaminade. Yeah, Aiden, you were talking about Aiden Johnson, another big time kid. Zakari Johnson, the kid
for
a lot
sure.
of people
At
think,
Plantation.
right, at
Yeah,
Plantation, who a lot of people look at and say, hey, wait a minute, that kid's a stud.
yeah,
So
yes.
you got a lot, we know Neiman Lawrence, obviously.
And
We
Amir
know,
Sears.
yeah, Amir Sears is just a whole different level type of kid. We know those type of guys we saw wonderful Wander Mons, who a lot of people are saying may be coming down here. I don't know about that, but the big 6'5" quarterback, 6'4" quarterback, who was hurt most of the year for Vero Beach. He's another kid. Brady Quinn from Naples Lately, Steve Quinn's son. who played, who actually threw for 358 yards in the loss of Central this year. So there's a whole bunch, like you mentioned. Amir Sears is a whole different level type of kid. Uh, he's ready to kind of turn it up. So yeah, when we get to this next class and then the 29 class too, Marcus, we're going to be seeing a lot of dudes. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
for
that
sure.
state championship was so good to see. Not only the present stars, but a lot of kids who are going to be on the radar pretty soon for the classes, 27 through 29.
Yeah, another 27 kid I want to mention is Davin Davidson, the quarterback for
Six
Cardinal Mooney.
six kid, yeah.
Big kid, I think he's got the ideal size. I think if he continues to develop, is going to be an outstanding talent.
Yeah.
NC State Northwestern interested in him right now, but getting a lot of interest from other players. Check out my article on rivals.com on him that I wrote recently. And another 27 kid that we didn't mention is Tiari Miller, the defensive back from Miami Central. I think he uh, has the ideal size, can
Oh,
really,
he's a big kid.
yeah, ideal size type of guy that you want at corner. Could play safety as well. Can come up and hit you, and covers well. So yeah, 27 is going to be a very fun class for me to dive into. Rivals camps coming up in February. UA camp in Orlando is a week after that. And then we've got, of course, Battle Miami coming up in January. And then we've got, most recently, we've got the Day versus Broward game coming up on Sunday. So we get to
Yes.
see some of the 26 guys that are underrated, and there's plenty of them. Of course, more than anyone that there's a ton of 26 guys that are under the radar and that will get a chance to shine one last time at Travis Powell Stadium. 305 Sports Twins are putting that one together. So it should be a nice event. You'll be there. I'll be there. And it should be a fun event at Traz to kind of put a bow or a close on the 2026, seniors going out with
Yeah.
a bang
Yeah.
here. So looking forward to that one on Sunday. Blue, thank you again for joining me here on the South Florida Recruiting Report. Always great stuff from you. Where can people find more stuff from you that you put together?
Well, we have, our Prep Red Zone Florida, which every day we bring, between myself and Drew and also Shannon. I mean, we have this state covered pretty much from top to bottom, from the Panhandle all the way to Key West. Every day we have something. I mean, we did really good throughout we spotlighted a lot of players. So you can go to there. You can go to LarryBlustein.com. We do a lot of Dayton Broward stuff. We'll have, a lot of features where we just did a look ahead with American Heritage, what they could look before the portal opens up. Well, with some of the kids coming back, we're going to do that too with some of the other programs like West Broward and St. Thomas. Obviously, going to be loaded. Usually every Monday night, but we kind of dance around. You've been a part of our radio show on WQAM, which we love. It's a great opportunity to highlight people like yourself and also some of the athletes. We get college coaches in the off season, and then every Monday night we do a Canes podcast on the Six Ring Canes. So yeah, it's a very busy time. Right now, as you mentioned, in recruiting. And now, like I said, we're going to be updating our 2026 class. We'll have close to 3,500 kids that'll be ranked, for the class. So, and even a lot of kids who haven't been able to get college scholarships. And, yeah, I appreciate you and always good seeing you. And certainly hope for a Miami win this Saturday so we can keep that train rolling.
Yeah, let's see if the Canes can keep that thing rolling on Saturday. Should be a good one. Thanks again, Blue, for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Good stuff.
Thanks. That's going to wrap it up for the South Florida recruiting part. Marcus Benjamin here, representing for Rivals.com. Make sure you can search Marcus Benjamin Rivals for my list of articles that I put together on a weekly, daily basis. Of course, make sure you subscribe, like, and share this podcast on YouTube. until the next episode.